Stewart Dickson to move amendment number 2. Mr. Dickson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to propose my party's amendment, which calls upon the Secretary of State to work with her counterparts in the Irish Government to convene talks between the political parties to reach agreement in a process to comprehensively deal with the past. I want to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, that my party can only support the original motion and the First Amendment if our amendment is accepted and carried, as we believe that the issue raised needs to be addressed through a comprehensive mechanism for dealing with the past. I hope that during this debate we would not indulge too heavily in what some may term as the blame game. We have to be very careful that we do not fall into a trap of increasing animosity, thus stifling progress and preventing people from getting recognition or answers about the things that were done to them. Rather, Mr. Speaker, we should grasp the opportunities that debates such as these give us to demonstrate our willingness as an Assembly to begin a process through which the legacy of the past can be effectively addressed, healing commenced and questions answered. We need to establish a process to allow us to examine very deep, hurtful and painful issues that many, if not all of us, have had visited upon us, whether it was through the death of a loved one, an attack on our property, or the impact of an event on an entire community. We owe it to each other and to those who are yet to come in our society to address what drove us to do the things that we did to each other. When 1/3 of our population considers themselves to be directly affected by the conflict, this is something that cannot and should not be ignored. Dealing with Northern Ireland's past and its legacy is difficult and a complicated issue, and there remains much individual and collective hurt in our society, particularly among those who have suffered directly as a result of the violence and the conflict. Mr. Speaker, very few would deny that Her Majesty the Queen's visit to the Republic of Ireland and apologies from the British Government in relation to Bloody Sunday and Claudy have improved relations, and we have no difficulty in acknowledging that today. However, Mr. Speaker, progress in high politics does not always filter down into the grassroots of our society, and the reality that division and segregation still is the norm in many parts of Northern Ireland. One only has to reflect on the events of recent weeks to know that this is true. We are a society infected by sectarianism and its outputs. Rates of sectarian crime have increased in recent years and accounts for roughly half of all reported hate crime. Division and duplication of services create huge financial costs, and research has revealed sadly that 1/3 of our children show preferences for names and flags and display different attitudes to police and marches from a very young age. It is clear, therefore, that the legacy of the Troubles must be addressed in a way that transforms our society from one characterised by division to one characterised by a desire for a true and lasting reconciliation. The Government of Ireland has played its part in our history. That is a society we are trying to unravel, but has also played a significant part in the process that has brought us to where we are today. And so it is vital that they are involved in the process for dealing with the past. That is why, although we have some doubts about the historical implications in the DUP's original motion, we welcome it as a step forward in recognising that the Irish Government, like all other parties that were part of the events of the last 40 years, need to talk about their involvement during that time. Mr. Speaker, we recognise the value that apologies can have in helping to heal the divisions and wounds of the past. However, it is the Alliance Party's belief that a mechanism that comprehensively deals with the past needs to be put in place first, and that this could only provide appropriate apologies but may also lead to forgiveness. Failure to breach the divide will lead to a continuing and divided and wasted future for many of our people, particularly those on this day who are on low incomes, losing their jobs, and that, Mr. Speaker, should be the first priority of this House. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues and I in the Alliance Party have emphasised for many years the importance of overcoming divisions and building a shared future for Northern Ireland. But this cannot be achieved without us as a society dealing with the legacy of the past, which, if left untouched, threatens to dominate our future. It is now over 10 months since the Assembly called on the previous Secretary of State to convene cross-party talks. It is over 3 years since the publication of Eames Bradley, and there's been no progress towards the establishment of true reconciliation process. This is a test for a new Secretary of State and all of the other players in the process. The legacy of the past remains a source of hurt and antagonism and infects our institutions and many sectors of our society. It is now time to address that legacy. I therefore urge members of this Assembly to support my party's amendment and call on the Secretary of State to convene talks so that we can begin to drive this process forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.